Any politician still talking about reforming ICE doesn't deserve the seat they're currently occupying.
Stephen Miller called Alex Preddy a domestic terrorist, with Vice President Vance and President Trump promoting that sentiment and that blatant lie from their pulpits. By this point, we have all seen that video from multiple angles. We've seen it with our own eyes. Alex was not a terrorist. He was in no way an assassin. He was a U.S. citizen exercising his First Amendment right to protest ICE's lawlessness. This week, families in Eagle County, Colorado, experienced another type of cruelty that fits into this administration's playbook. They found death cards held up in the automobiles of their family members who were taken away by ICE agents. These cards, I hold one up here, have a history of being used by white supremacist groups to intimidate people of color. Death cards is what they call them. These cards found in Colorado had the address and the phone number of the Aurora ICE detention facility printed on them. Aurora is a sister city, neighboring city to Denver. Now imagine just for a second that you haven't heard from your brother, your sister, and when you finally find their empty, abandoned car, it has one of these death cards sitting in the driver's seat. I mean, this is cruelty for the sake of cruelty. And it fits into the troubling pattern that we're seeing come from some of the top officials in the White House. Now, this morning I voted against government funding that would have handed billions of dollars to DHS. Continuing to fund ICE while federal officers terrorize our cities and kill people is unconscionable.
Well, actually, we have seen white supremacist tattoos.
Risking their lives, serving the government.
Risking their lives, they're taking lives,
You're calling
Kevin.
them Proud Boy militia. Did you say that?
Well, I did not call them Proud Boy militia, but I think it's disgraceful that you're sitting here. I'm actually not. But I think that there are white supremacist tattoos on their
White supremacist federal officers.
Yeah, white supremacist federal officers.
Like, where are you going with this? Why would you say that?
I'm going with my eyes, ears, and logic. There have been multiple ICE agents who have white supremacist
men and women
working
for the federal government, risking their lives, carrying out a mandate, and they're white supremacists?
Yes, and you're a member of a cult, so I don't expect you to have logic.
Whoa.
I think the generalizations here are a bit of an overreach.
Yeah, and let's not make personal attacks.
I think what most people would say in this country is, we would like the police and ICE and everybody else to target people who have committed bad crimes in a process that still honors our Constitution and the Bill of Rights. What we don't want is what seems to be overly aggressive, poorly executed trawling expeditions where 5-year-olds and grandmothers and people of mistaken identity and people in Target parking lots aren't getting the shit kicked out of them in an effort to satisfy Stephen Miller's bloodlust and his quotas.
So, I mean, it was always going to be like this, right? When you look at the numbers during the campaign, the sheer number of immigrants that they were claiming that they were going to deport, you were never going to be able to get to that number by arresting the worst of the worst, right? Because to get the worst of the worst, those are the people who are not showing up for court hearings, right? Those are the people who are in hiding. And so it takes investigation, it takes resources, it takes 8 to 10 man teams to go out and track these people down and arrest them. And so what you saw is very early on, you saw Stephen Miller's, there's a sort of infamous reported meeting that he had where he was screaming at people and saying, we need to be raiding Home Depot parking lots. We need to be casting these wide nets in the community. And the other thing that I think is really, the really damning thing is, for a long time, ICE prioritized the worst of the worst. Like that was who we directed our resources at. And that makes perfect sense. When Trump took office in 2016, one of the first things he did was deprioritize going after the worst of the worst and prioritize going after migrants. So people who were here seeking asylum, people who didn't have a criminal record. Biden revoked that policy, and then Trump within his first week of office last year, put it back in place. And so they aren't targeting the worst of the worst. They are going out and getting whoever they can, wherever they can. They're going to places where, every stereotypical kind of racist asshole thinks all the illegals are, right? Those are the places where they're going.
My name is Ali Rahman, and I am a resident of South Minneapolis. I'm a Bangladeshi American, born in northern Wisconsin, and I'm a disabled person with autism and a traumatic brain injury. Not all autistic brains do this, but mine fixates on sounds, numbers, and patterns. And while what the world saw happen to me exactly 3 weeks ago today on video was a terrible violation, it is still nothing compared to the horrific practices I saw inside the Whipple Center. So I am here today with a duty to the people who have not had the privilege of coming home, and I offer this data because these practices must end now. On January 13th, on the way to my 39th appointment at Hennepin County's Traumatic Brain Injury Center, I encountered a traffic jam caused by ICE vehicles and no signs indicating how to get around it. I had not wanted to pull into a blocked, chaotic intersection, but verbally agreed to do so and rolled down my window after an agent yelled, "Move! I will break your effing window!" His first instruction. Agents on all sides of my vehicle yelled conflicting threats and instructions that I could not process while watching for pedestrians. Then the glass of the passenger side window flew across my face. I yelled, "I'm disabled," at the hands grabbing at me, and an agent said, "Too late." I felt immersed in a pattern, and I thought of Genoa Donald, an autistic black man killed by police during a traffic stop in 2021. I remembered Mr. Sliberio Vega Gonzalez, who was killed by ICE in his vehicle last year. An agent pulled a large combat knife in front of my face, which I thought was for cutting me, and later learned was used to cut off my seatbelt. Shooting pain went through my head, neck, and wrists when I hit the ground face first and people leaned on my back. I felt the pattern, and I thought of Mr. George Floyd, who was killed 4 blocks away. I was carried face down through the street by my cuffed arms and legs while yelling that I had a brain injury and was disabled. I now cannot lift my arms normally. I was never asked for ID, never told I was under arrest, never read my rights, and never charged with a crime. Approaching the Whipple Center, I saw black and brown bodies shackled together, chained together, being marched by yelling agents outdoors. I continue to hear the word bodies because that is how agents refer to us.
Ms. Martinez, these are images of texts sent by the agent who shot you. And they're actually disturbing to read, but I think it's important for the public to see this. The agent linked an article about your shooting and texted, "Read it. 5 shots, 7 holes. I fired 5 rounds and she had 7 holes. Put that in your book, boys." Oh, well, it is what it is. It happens. This is someone that works for the United States government. I fired 5 rounds and she had 7 holes. Now, he was talking about you, and it's our understanding that he was actually bragging about his aim shooting an unarmed American citizen. Is that right?
Correct.
I'm so sorry, Ms. Martinez. DHS has allowed the agent who shot you to remove evidence and to potentially destroy it. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's what the American people are doing right now in the streets of America. That's what they're using to protect themselves. Whistles and their cameras. That's what they're doing against a fascist army. Speaker Johnson says, quote, ICE is doing what ICE is designed to do. That's what he said. How many more of our neighbors have to be executed? How many more of our neighbors have to be killed? I refuse to send another dollar to the Department of Homeland Security. My residents don't want their tax dollars going to execute people in the streets, abduct 5-year-olds, tear gas children, and separate our families. This is what the Trump administration is doing right now with DHS funding. It's a fascist army, and it's shameful. I grew up in Southwest Detroit, Mr. Speaker, with 20 different beautiful ethnicities. We were the northern border. And what my community and our community kept telling us back then, during its creation, literally, is they told us they are violating people's civil rights. We do not feel safe with them in our community. People were jogging around our parks and getting stopped to be asked what their legal status was. They were militarizing Southwest Detroit. They told us back then, stop funding ICE. Kristi Noem has violated the United States Constitution, eroded due process, and again violated federal processes and laws by preventing members of Congress already from conducting oversight in their facilities. Shame on them. This is not an agency, Mr. Speaker, that can be reformed. You can impeach the secretary, and she needs to be impeached. But this is an agency that was created to do what it's doing now. It is built on violence and racism. ICE must be abolished. Kristi Noem must be impeached. These murders should be prosecuted. I'm not looking for people to get fired. I'm looking for them to be truly held accountable for killing our loved ones, for ripping our children from our arms. Not one more penny should go to this agency that terrorizes our communities.
More than 20 House Democrats voted with the Republicans to reopen the government and keep the Department of Homeland Security funded at current levels for 2 weeks with no new restrictions or conditions. The message is clear. It doesn't matter what this administration does. The currently constituted Democratic Party won't even attempt to slow it down around the edges. Now, after the vote, Representative Pramila Jayapal said in an interview, "We need Senate Democrats to start negotiating with us and carrying out our demands instead of constantly caving to Republicans." Jon Stewart is right. The people of Minnesota and the people of America are standing up, and they're fighting for their neighbors. It's about time Democrats did the same.